All right, thank you very much. It's Wednesday, March 20th, and I'm calling to order the Denver Regional Council of Governments Board of Directors meeting. Let's start out with a Pledge of Allegiance. All right, may we have a roll call, please?
Eva Henry. Bill Holland.
Here.
Elise Jones. Dennis McCloskey. Tim Mock.
Here.
Paul Ryan. Here. Chris Nevitt. Here. Jack Hilbert.
Here.
Connie McLean. Don Rozier. Here. Rachel Zenzinger. Here. Bob Roth.
Here.
Sue Horn. Here. David Spellman. Casey Becker. Here. Ann Justin. Here. Cynthia Martinez. Here. Paul Donahue. Clark Hamelman. Yeah. Kathy Noon. Here. Ron Engels. Tom Riley. Doug Tisdale. Here. Gail Christie. Here. Jim Benson. Here. Michael Ayers. Joe Baker. Todd Riddle. Laura Keegan. Mike Spees. Randy Penn.
Here.
Mark Gruber. Here. Joyce Thomas. Here. George Heath. Yes. Jennifer Weinberger. Lisa Jones. Bob Easton. Amy Shears. Here. Henry Ergott. Matthew Skeen. Paula Bovo. Dario Katarchik. Marjorie Sloan. Bob Vermeulen. Here. Ron Rakowski. Here. Jack Morgan. Christine Berg. Stacy Luberger. Adam Paul. Here. Jim Taylor. Here. Jackie Millay. Here. Katie Witt. Here. Hank Dalton. Here. Julie Van Domelen. Here. Ursula Morgan. Chris Wolf. Sean Forey. Joe Gearlock.
Here.
Joyce Downing. Here. John Diak. Sorry. Cliff Mueller. Fred Lissy. Kurt Osborne. Deborah Williams. Val Vigil. Nancy McNally. Faith Winter. Joyce J. Here. Doug Young. Deborah Perkins Smith. Here. Andrew Friedman.
Here. Okay, I am in need of a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, although I don't know why, but okay. The agenda is approved as submitted. First thing on the agenda is a report of the chair, and my report on the Regional Transportation Committee will be very brief. The meeting was canceled, so there is no report. But I would like to take a moment this evening to recognize the fact that a key member of the DRCOG staff, and a very familiar face to all of us, is retiring in April. This is likely Steve Rudy's last meeting since he announced his retirement in April. He's DRCOG's Transportation Planning and Operations Director. I wanted to get that title right. So we will definitely be missing Steve. I've been on the board almost 7 years, and honestly I can't remember a meeting that Steve didn't attend and either give us a briefing, answer questions, provide information that we needed to make critical decisions. So this is going to be a tremendous change for the board. I know Jennifer's going to be sharing some information about Steve and his contributions to DRCOG later in the meeting, but on behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you to Steve for his contributions and his efforts to improve transportation in the Denver region and to each of our communities. So Steve, staff's question was, whatever will you do on Wednesday nights? But but I'm assuming that you are at this very moment working on presentations for your family, and you'll be turning off the TV and giving them a briefing on Wednesday nights. 30-page PowerPoint. That's it. But seriously, you have our thanks and appreciation, and you will, best wishes for a long and happy retirement. You will be missed. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the Executive Director for her report.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly just go through some of the handouts that are at your seat this evening. First, I want to mention the this beautiful little pink sheet here. You're invited to Live, Work, Play 2013 Award Celebration. I want to first point out that you should go online and vote. All the finalists have been selected. We have a lot of really good nominees this year. The number of your jurisdictions are represented, 10 I guess, in the one category. We're also recognizing some employers who are doing great things with regard to allowing their staff to use alternative ways to get back and forth to work as well as working from home. So go online and vote. There's also some information there about registering to attend the award event. For board members only, we are going to send you out an email that will have a code and will allow you to register at a discounted rate. The board rate is $30 as opposed to $45, so don't register quite yet. We'll have the link up in another couple of days. We'll send you that link. Go online and register at that time. But you can go online now and vote, and you can vote often if you want. So get out there and support your favorite project. Let's see. Wanted to also point out this handout, which is with regard to a workshop that's coming up. This is about implementing P3s in Colorado. Let's see, lost my place here trying to read off of both things here. This is just a one-day workshop, but Dr. is one of the sponsors, and it was organized by the Council for Public-Private Partnerships and the CU Institute for Governance. So if you're interested, please register for that as well. There are a couple of other handouts at your seat, but I'm not going to talk about those. Rich Morrow will talk about those when we get to the legislative piece. And finally, I wanted to point out that I have a whole stack of the Realtors Association's On Common Ground booklet. This is a regular publication that they put out, and this particular publication has a lot of information on generations, seniors, millennials, Generation X, what they're looking for in growth and development, what kind of communities they want to live in, what's important with regard to transportation, etc. If you haven't got a copy, you should all actually be on the mailing list. But if you want a copy because you haven't seen one, let me know. I've got, like I said, I've got a stack of them up here. But these are really great, and interestingly enough, they support a lot of what you're trying to do in Metro Vision 2035 as well as what you'll be putting into Metro Vision 2040. Wanted to remind you, I'm sure that you've gotten an email about this already, but there is going to be a workshop here at Dr. Cog on March 25th at 3:30 to hear a little bit more about the CDOT ramp program. So Deb is here this evening. I see her there. Thought I saw you out in the hall. Deb is here if you have any questions about that. And we're also looking at the possibility of doing something very similar at the April MVIC meeting time, which I think is April 3rd. We should know a little bit more about that in the next couple of days, so we'll get a notice out right away if we're going to be able to do it at MVIC as well. I'm imagining, since we're kind of tying this workshop on the 25th to the TAC meeting, a lot of your staff will be attending on the 25th. With regard to the board's workshop that you did in February, we'll be doing some follow-up on that at your next meeting. I'm still awaiting a little bit of information from the board officers to be sure that they feel like we've accurately captured all of the discussions that were had in the breakout session. So as soon as I have that, we'll put together a little presentation for you here at your board meeting. A couple of prominent issues that came up were the structure and the value of MVIC, and the other thing was how do we go about helping board members stay brushed up on not only programs but various activities and emerging issues that come up here at Dr. Cog's. But ultimately, we'll be bringing all of these items to you in your annual strategic plan, for incorporation in your annual strategic plan. Related to that, we had a little bit of discussion at the workshop about your MOU with CDOT. This is the agreement that you have with CDOT related to funding equity. That thing is expiring very soon, and we need to get a feel from you as a board whether it's important to try to carry this MOU through to the future. So that's something else that we'll probably talk about at the next MVIC meeting. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you about? The chair has made appointments to Dr. Cog's new Citizens Advisory Committee. That's in attachment I of your agenda this evening. The letters have been sent to the appointees, and their first meeting will be next month. So that's an exciting new thing that's going on here. And I guess I'll just wrap up by making a few comments myself about Steve. He's shaking his head and getting concerned, as well he should. Sue mentioned that she's been here 7 years on the board, but Steve's tenure goes back 24 years here at Dr. Cog. He's been around a long time. He started out as an engineer. He was a program director. He was a program manager, and finishing up as division director for transportation planning and operations. I don't think that many people know all of the nuts and bolts of federal transportation planning and funding and the various processes quite the way that that Steve does, and I've certainly relied on him heavily to help me understand some of these complicated issues as well. As you all know, he's very detail oriented, but that's been a very good thing for all of us. He really understands the nuts and bolts of transportation planning, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level. And because he's been here so long, he has this great institutional knowledge that I don't know that anyone else has, board members or staff. Then kind of thinking back about some of the things that have happened while Steve was here and things that he's been heavily involved in, one of the first things that comes to mind is, one, just working well with FHWA, FTA, RTD, CDOT. He's always been a great asset and negotiator on behalf of Dr. Cog. He was also part of the federal stimulus process, the ERA funding, and making sure that we got those dollars out really quickly. You'll recall that that was sort of the mandate, was to get the dollars out as quickly as possible, keep people employed, and we actually received national attention for making that happen, in large part because of Steve's efforts. Another thing that Steve worked on with actually another former employee, Karen McGowan, and Lorraine Anderson and Nancy Sharp and a few others, was that MOU with CDOT, that agreement that says that this is what the fair share for the Denver metro area will be with regard to transportation funding. He's also worked on a number of other high-profile projects like Fast Tracks, T-Rex, the Mousetrap, and our traffic signal program. He's been this huge resource to DRCOG, to as an organization, to the board of directors, to individual jurisdictions, to me as well. And I want to thank you, Steve, for your service here at DRCOG. We'll miss you, but I think that we'd all like to be in your place where we're retiring and going to take lots of road trips and play golf, not just on Monday afternoons, but maybe every afternoon, I don't know. So good luck. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope retirement is all that you anticipate it will be. So thanks again, and you're free to say a few words if you want, since this is your last board meeting. Just a few, just a few.
Well, you know, one of the weird things is Beth Umenick just decided to get sick so I'd have something to do on the agenda tonight, you know. So I will be showing up, giving you the stack report later on, but just a couple of things. Yes, I've been at DRCOG 23 and a half years, but I had a time when I went away. I actually started work here first part of January, first part of January 1982. And so, yeah, and that was back in the days when our obstructed vision meeting room over at Diamond Hill, our audio-visual consisted of young planners like me standing up next to the flip charts, flipping them over as my boss would go through his presentation. But, you know, back in those times, one of the things that I did work on heavily back then was DRCOG did the site access work for the Denver International Airport, which many people forget. DRCOG had a major role in the site selection process, and one of the things I was happy to do at that time was to be part of that. As I went before, look, this is really not about me. This organization is not me. It's not DRCOG staff per se. This organization is really all of you that sit at this table. This is our job. I'd like to say it's our 9-to-5 job, but it's maybe our 7-to-7 job or something like that. But you all have other jobs. You represent yourselves on commissions, councils. You have many other organizations, and yet you take the time to come here and be part of this organization and engage yourself in the types of things that this organization takes on. We don't deal with inconsequential things here. And, you know, I'd love to be able to say I've tried to make things as simple for you as possible, but you all know I would be lying if I said that. So it is, what we do is complicated, complex here, and I admire you and all of your predecessors who've sat in these seats for the work, the effort, the time that you put in to do it. So I'm going to miss this place, but I am certainly not irreplaceable. Somebody has said before, you need to know when it's time to leave. I think it's time for me to leave. I'm older than I look, and my body's older than my age. So I want to get out while I can still do some things, and I wish you all luck with Jennifer and whoever my successor will be. So it's been my pleasure to serve you since, on and off, since 1982.
Thank you, Steve. Are you finished? Before we move to public comment, it's been brought to my attention, we thought that there were, normally we introduce new board members and alternates, but we didn't think we had any. However, I understand we have an alternate from Netherlands here this evening.
Actually, this is Aspen. She is, you can stand up. She was my campaign manager, so we were successful and I was elected in the last campaign. She has met the governor, she's been to the Capitol, and she's explained her invention to the governor's deputy chief of staff, who thought it was a good idea. So we're proud to have her here. She's here to review our process.
Thank you, Aspen, and don't be too harsh in your critique, okay? All right, now we come to public comment, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. I'm requesting that we have no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. If at this time there's anyone who'd like to make a comment, if you would please step forward to the podium and introduce yourself. Well, that's a short session. Thank you. We'll move to the approval of the consent agenda, which consists of last meeting's minutes. All right, it's been moved and approved that we moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimously approved. Next on the agenda is a discussion of the state legislative issues by Rich Morrow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I actually have some good news for you tonight, and that is that I don't have any new bills to present. I think this may be the first time in my memory that we've gotten a month during the session where there hadn't actually been any new bills. Although it is, because I'm told there's like a couple hundred or more bills in the pipeline that could, and we've only got, what, 6 weeks left, I think, in the session, something like that. So, and plus the budget to do, so it's going to be pretty crazy. But I do want to update you on 3 of the bills in your packet on the matrix of bills that you've taken actions on before. The first one I want to talk about is Senate Bill 48, which is the bill that authorizes cities and counties to use HUTF monies for transit purposes. That bill passed out of House Transportation Committee this afternoon. However, it had an amendment placed on it capping the amount that can be used for transportation operations to 15%. So there was some discussion about wanting to make sure that most of the money went for capital and that a jurisdiction didn't decide to use all of their HUTF to operate their transit system or line or whatever. So they passed an amendment to cap that at 15%. I don't know if that's going to be controversial when the bill goes to the floor or create any problems, but it did pass out of committee. I think it was 11-2, so we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, Jack. Oh, sorry, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Hilbert.
Yeah. Did that pass over objection of the sponsor? I'm just curious.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember hearing an objection. Although I will say I do know that they, when Max Tyler, who brought the amendment forward, first brought it up, they did take a recess to, I guess, have a little confab and discuss it before he came back. So there might have been something they needed to work out. Okay, the other bill I wanted to just bring to your attention that you've had some conversation about here before is Senate Bill 27, which is the RTD parking bill. That bill is in House Transportation Committee tomorrow and I think tomorrow morning. And I think there are a couple amendments that I've heard are going to be proposed, and it's on the committee for action only. They already had testimony on that, so it's just for action only. One amendment will be just to the legislative declaration by, I think it's Representative Dominic Moreno from Commerce City, to basically state the intent of the legislature that any revenues that RTD might get from charging for parking, that those revenues would remain in that corridor of where the money's raised. I think that's the intent of that amendment. And then another amendment I think that may be discussed is one that I think Lakewood is proposing to put in, I believe, a 30-day window in which a local government could object to any contract that RTD's worked out with a private party to construct or operate a parking facility. My understanding is that RTD is opposing that amendment, but that's about as much as I know about it right now. Madam Chair, do you want to comment on Adam?
Yes, Adam?
Thank you. Yeah, Lakewood, Representative Max Tyler is going to initiate our amendment and basically asking that RTD earlier in the year did a similar IGA with the community. We'd like to see that language put in this bill. We're not opposed to the bill, but as we discussed last month, we'd like to see more local control and the right of refusal as well. So that's what we're going to be pushing for.
From what I'm hearing, that amendment may have a steep hill to climb, but and I don't think, as I understand it, both CML and CCI are supporting the bill as is. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, I guess.
Well, and if anybody would like to try to reach out to the folks on the Transportation Committee, if you agree, I would encourage you to do so.
Ron?
Rich and fellow board members, I'm told that tomorrow the Dog Protection Act will drop in the Senate and be introduced, and this will affect every municipality and county that has law enforcement attached to it. It will require mandatory training and currency of training about how to handle dogs by police officers and sheriff's deputies. And this is a result of some instances where dogs have been shot and people have thought that was not the right thing to do. And it's an unfunded mandate. It will not be done under post training. It'll be done separately. There is going to be a task force committee put together, and so it will have an impact in the training area for your sheriffs and police officers.
Okay, thanks, Ron. If there's any other comments or questions, the last bill that I want to present is Senate Bill 127, which are the two handouts that I placed in front of you, and hopefully everybody got one. I have extras if you didn't, and I've got enough for the audience too, which we didn't distribute yet, but I can. This also, let me start by pointing out that the most recent quarterly revenue forecast for the general fund revenues was released this past Monday, and it was actually generally pretty good. The forecast, I think, was a couple $100 million higher than what it was in December, and the part of the other significance of that is this really kicks off the long bill budget process into high gear. The Joint Budget Committee is making its final decisions on the long bill the last couple of days and the rest of this week, and they expect to have the long bill introduced into the Senate this coming Monday, the 25th. That also means that it won't be long before the Appropriations Committee starts scheduling bills that have money attached to them, and that includes Senate Bill 127, our bill to increase the older Coloradan fund by $4 million in this upcoming fiscal year, plus additional increases in the next 2 fiscal years. And so I also attached a list of the contact information for members of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and I think it would be very, very helpful to our cause if they could hear from elected officials, particularly if they're in your jurisdiction or if you know them personally, to let them know that you support both the statutory appropriation that's in the Senate Bill 127 and the additional increases in funding in those out years. This is again one of those situations, sort of as we talked about with some of these other bills, where we never know how it's going to end up in the process. The legislature understandably has a lot of different priorities that they want to try to fund. So we're just one of those that they're needing to try to figure out how much they can fund. We're in I think in a good place to start with the fact that 3 weeks ago, when they did figure setting on the human services budget, they did actually put a placeholder in that budget for $4 million. So essentially setting aside the first years of money that we have in this bill. And so now we need to make sure that the bill does actually pass and move through the process. And then, of course, the other question is sometimes there's nervousness about binding future legislatures or agreeing in advance to increase funding, because the bill calls for $4 million this year, $8 million next year, and $12 million the subsequent year. So we've been providing information to them to justify those increases, and staff has talked to this board many times about the aging of the population and the growing needs and so forth. And the new fact sheet that we just produced and are beginning to distribute really focuses a lot on the money aspect of it, since that's really going to be the debate going forward, to show how the AAA services are much more cost effective than the alternative services. And we've got some information on the fact sheet showing that many times if someone cannot access services to keep them in their home, it's not long before they end up in a nursing home, going on Medicaid, getting nursing home and other Medicaid services, which are much more costly than the services we provide. So we're also trying to make a case that we can actually save them money over time if they're willing to invest in the AAA services. So that's going to be a major push of ours over the coming month, and anything that our board members can do to help with legislators will be much appreciated.
Jim?
Can I talk about a piece of federal legislation? Is this appropriate time?
Yeah, this is the good time.
Thank you. It's a possibility that very soon the Marketplace Fairness Act will be introduced in Congress. There are a large number of co-sponsors for this piece of legislation, and it has the best chance it's ever had to at least get some legs to move forward. What the proposal is attach an amendment to a budget bill, which would be non-binding, but a vote would be required, which says that if there's enough support for that, they will create then a bill that will allow the communities, counties, cities, states that collect sales tax on internet and catalog sales to move forward. Because that's what this is. It allows those people who collect a tax can also charge that tax to internet sales and to catalog sales. Right now we cannot do that because of a federal Supreme Court ruling that said you can't, but that Congress had the ability to allow us to do so. So none of our congressional delegation in Congress has signed on as a co-sponsor for this bill. I would like for this board to take a position that says we support this, so our federal lobbyists can say the Denver region supports having this bill move forward. Now, I recognize that those counties that don't have a sales tax may not benefit for this, but the counties also represent the cities, and the cities exist on sales tax. We need something like this. It's estimated there's between $22.5 and $23 billion in sales tax revenue lost every year through internet and catalog sales. So what I'm asking is that we authorize our federal lobbyist to speak on our behalf to try to get this passed. Our state lobbyist just a little bit ago said that there's a good possibility a bill will be introduced in our state house that's going to do the enabling legislation. So if this gets through Congress, then our state will be ahead of the game and we can go ahead and start doing that collection. So I guess I'd be willing to make a motion if you're ready to that we go on record as supporting the Marketplace Fairness Act in Congress.
Second.
Okay. I was just going to say, do we have a second? All right, so we have we've had a motion and a second for the board to support the, what is it, Fairness Act, the Marketplace Fairness Act, sorry, I want to get that right, in Congress. Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
what essentially these two pieces of legislation, we had a meeting with Kathleen Conte, who's going to introduce the bill in the House. It simply provides parity between online purchases with local businesses. In essence, they're getting beat up by the internet, and this would provide a form of improved revenue and improved competition with our local businesses. We don't collect any sales tax from any internet provider at this point.
Denny?
Yes, in addition, as Bill spoken, there's also that many of you are aware of the technique of showrooming. Your retailers are actually providing the chance for the people to go in, snap the iPhone photo of what they want, go home, go online, get the exact thing mailed to them on your roads with no support for your roads being beat up by the same truck. So it does affect us in a couple ways. It affects the bricks and mortar facilities that you have in your district to be revenue generators. It also is a neighborhood additional wear and tear on the road that you're not being funded for either. So the big argument, the slog, has been, what are the thresholds? You know, what is going to be the small business exclusion, the volume of population, or the volume of revenue that you bring in every year? And really the opinion is it's either too high or too low, but there's not as much disagreement at this point that they're going to move forward with something. So that's a good thing.
Katie and then Jack?
When we were at National League of Cities, our Mayor Pro Tem actually called out the delegation on the carpet and said, how come none of your bosses have signed on to this? The answer that was given was there are some things that they're not sure about, and that they did want to make sure that the piece in Colorado got done. So is it appropriate to say that we support the concept of this bill, but we don't have to say exactly this bill, just the concept? Does it matter?
I don't know as it matters, but that's what's before us right now. And what the final version is going to be, it's anybody's guess, I think.
Jack, and then Val, and then...
I'm not going to stand up here and beat my chest lobbying against this issue. There's a lot of issues regarding fairness of equality, regarding the internet purchases and transactions, because the delivery system uses our roadways. The problem I have with the bill, period, is that it begins to tax businesses locally for products and services that are not otherwise available in those communities anyway. And the fact is that suddenly a transaction will take place in my home, as an example, for a product and service that my town doesn't even sell or offer. And so that transaction would have actually taken place for a product sold in another town, like Centennial or Littleton or Aurora or somewhere else, where I would have traveled to get that particular product. So the unfairness aspect of this is that they're taxing everything as if every community offers those services and those taxes. They don't. Okay, and that's the unfairness aspect of this, even though they call it the fairness, it's the unfairness aspect to communities who offer those. So the communities that do offer those services and products is they never better think very carefully about what's happening, about what now is being taxed, which would otherwise be taxed in their community. I would feel more comfortable, and with Katie's aspect also, but one of the issues here is the fact that I wish they would tie it to a specific function. Transportation, 1%. So are we going to do what type of tax structure across the board? Is it 8%, 6%, 5%, 4%, 2%? Is it the local municipality where the transaction took place? Is it the state that it's in? What are the funds dedicated to? What are they going to be used for? There are so many unknown factors here. This is just like a cash cow. Some people call it a politician's dream. So I probably won't be supporting it, but the fact is, I do believe there's fairness in that internet transactions are delivered to our homes, and there is no reimbursement to those communities for their transportation costs for those vehicles using our roadways, and that's one of the things that bugged me. So thank you.
Val, and then Joe.
Yes, a couple of things. Number one is that I belong to the Fair Policy Committee of the NLC, which reviewed this particular policy itself, and the NLC is actually endorsing and pushing for it. So that's the National League of Cities. So it's really supporting that behind it, and it's going to be depending on the state statute, but it will be a state collected. Each city will not collect each individual. They're not expecting this out-of-state or this internet companies to be able to know exactly what tax rate each individual city is and where the boundaries are. Those items will be figured out at the enabling legislation at the state level. And the bill that was passed through the Fair Committee and approved by the NLC is specifically states that the state will enable and deal with the details. And I don't think there's going to be that big of a problem in arriving at right now. If the state says we will go ahead and go with the state tax rate and then redistribute it back to the cities, that's something that we never had to begin with. So it's something that's better than nothing.
Thanks, Joe, and then Doug.
I support the motion for Dr. Cog to support this legislation, but I'd like to point out that the vote may have already occurred today, or it will occur tomorrow. So if we do decide to support this, it'll have to happen tomorrow morning.
Doug?
Just to supplement, I think, what Joe mentioned, the action alert that Sam Mamet sent around to Metro mayors talks about the fact that later this week, possibly over the weekend, the Senate was going to be considering the amendment to the 2014 budget resolution. I liked the spin that Katie put on it in terms of that Dr. Cog supports the principles espoused in the Marketplace Fairness Act, which I think is appropriate at this point because all that's before us is the Marketplace Fairness Amendment to the budget resolution. So it's not the complete act, and it's just essentially running it up the flagpole to see if they can get 60 votes to to achieve cloture. If in fact that's the case, I would suggest a friendly amendment to Jim's motion and say that we support the principles espoused in the Marketplace Fairness Act that addresses, I think, some of Jack's concerns, but gets the message out there, and it can be communicated to our congressional delegation. It would seem to me our more than capable legislative agents can do that even tonight.
Okay, I think we have Jim Benson, and then Jennifer, and then Kathy.
Am I up? Okay. Well, I agree with the motion. Over many years, I've determined that the tax normally equals the shipping that you're going to have to pay if you order it online. So who's that giving business to? UPS and FedEx. And the cities are not getting any of that I can see. Neither is the state. people will go into stores and look at items, and then they'll go out and find a better price online and buy them. That hurts local businesses, I think. There are very few things that I buy that aren't in local stores, that I can't go around and find them. And it might cause that situation to reverse itself, where you look online and find a good price of an item, and then you go to a local store to buy it. I think it might have that reverse effect, and that would be a good effect, to give more business to the local store in addition to bringing in more sales tax revenue. What if you buy a car? What if you bought a car? And people do buy cars online. You buy them out of state, but when you come into this state to register your vehicle, you're going to pay the sales tax on it. So I don't know. I just
That's why it's not the same with everything else.
it adds to city revenue, and to me, that's at least half of the argument right there.
Jennifer?
I'm going to assume for the sake of argument that you are actually going to pass this motion based on the conversation that I'm hearing. But I would suggest that the motion be framed in a way that makes it very germane to the business of DRCOG, speaking maybe to the transportation component or something like that, because otherwise we will find ourselves taking positions on all sorts of things that are very important to your jurisdictions, but not necessarily related to the business of this board, and taking staff away from focusing on things like fixing, to the extent we may be able to, the sequester and its impact on the AAA and transit services and things of that nature.
Kat?
I'll just report that Metro Mayors did send a letter of support as well, just to throw that into the mix, and that stated, as it's been going around, I can support this, but I would not want this to trickle down and say that we were supporting the Kathleen Conti bill, and just because I have actually got a copy of it and read it, and it's very different than the Fair Marketplace Act. So just realize you're giving up all sorts of home rule powers if you do it, and it really wouldn't transfer down into a DRCOG issue at all. So I just want to make sure, and I was going to say that before you said what you said, Jennifer, because it really is very different to me, the two bills. So just wanted to throw that out.
I would just add that it is my understanding that both Amazon.com is supporting the House bill, as is Walmart. So I think you've got two varying business structures supporting this program. So I certainly support the concept, and I agree with Jennifer's concern that we frame it in a way that supports our mission and vision statement.
Doug?
I think just supportive of that thought is what Commissioner Hilbert pointed out too, with the increase in delivery trucks and increased weight in delivery trucks, the impact on our roads in terms of what they're doing, and that the sales tax revenue generated can also be put to, among other purposes, transportation and transit improvements. So I think those two elements can be brought into the spirit of the motion, and I think accomplishes what Jim brought up in the first instance.
Jim, would you like to make any
Well,
changes?
the idea is that I just think we need to do some support for this bill to move forward and try to get our congressmen to sign on to it, our senators as well. And if it needs to be in principle, that's fine with me. If it needs to talk into how it's going to tie in, as Doug said, to transportation or other things that DRCOG does, that's great. It's going to benefit the cities that we all represent. And so that's what I'm after, trying to make this fair.
All right, so is everybody comfortable with the, sorry. Chris?
I did. I just wanted to maybe back off or hope a little bit of the direction that Doug went. I think the nexus, the transportation nexus, is important, and I think it's easy to articulate. given the central role of local governments in building transportation infrastructure, and given the critical role, particularly in Colorado, of sales tax to the funding stream for local governments. Therefore, we'd support the Marketplace Fairness Act. I don't think we have to say the money should be dedicated to transportation. Just, you know, we play a big role in transportation. This is where our money comes from. So we ought to be getting it, goddammit. And the point ought to be to focus on our congressional delegation, because that's the what? Oh, sorry. It happens. Anyway.
So,
She was busy doing something else.
No, it'll be part of her critique of our process.
She was tweeting.
So if we could direct our staff to focus on our congressional delegation, they should be on board with this, because this matters so much to local jurisdictions in Colorado particularly.
Well, and I think the other thing I heard, which I think is also important, I think Doug had mentioned, and I actually found an article that said the same thing just now, that they are trying to attach an amendment to the budget resolution in the Senate as a test to see if they can get 60 votes for that. Then it would be a signal to the leadership to allow an actual bill to move forward. So so what I understand, whatever they're proposing tomorrow or before the end of the week wouldn't be the actual law, but it would send a signal so that they can move ahead. They got enough votes that they'd be able to hit the 60-vote threshold on a bill.
So after this discussion, I'd just like some clarification on the motion, so we know exactly what we're voting on. Do you want to take a stab at that, Jim?
Well, let me try this. That Dr. Cog goes on record of asking our congressional delegation to support the Marketplace Fairness Act.
Point of order on the statement of the motion, and my comment was not intended to amend the motion, but rather to provide a context and, if you will, a statement of legislative history for purposes of staff being able to implement the motion and adopting the spirit of it.
And so the direction to staff is just that what we want to do is write a letter, make a phone call, whatever it is we need to do to our federal lobbyists to make sure that message gets to the Colorado congressional delegation. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, we're not expending a whole.
Well, if we would take a position on that, our federal lobbyist would also be aware of that.
Correct.
So if he has the opportunity, he can say something about that.
Right. Okay. Do you need more? And is that within the context of...
Just restate the motion one last time.
Well, I think what I said was, Connie may have to confirm it, was we are asking our congressional delegation to support the Marketplace Fairness Act.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
No.
Okay, maybe we'll do hands.
How many no?
3 or 4.
If you said no, raise your hand.
Well, they're popping up now.
Got Deborah back there too? Yeah. I kind of died.
Abstentions? The motion passes with 9 opposed. Do we have any other discussion on this topic? I'm sorry, the whole topic of state legislative issues, and I guess we amended it to federal, but I think state, we'll work on state.
Stay tuned.
All right, thank you very much, Rich. Next, we have a motion to delay member request for additional urban growth boundary area, UGB/A, until after MetroVision 2040 has been adopted by the Dr. Cobb Board of Directors.
I so move.
And
Yeah.
so Brad was just going to give us a brief update
this
on
is
this.
fine.
Do you not need one? I mean,
The perfect memo, yes.
So we have a motion and a second to go ahead and delay member request for additional growth. Do we have any discussion?
Move the question.
Commissioner Hilbert?
Are we aware of any member who has applied for?
Nope.
That's going to be applying for?
Well,
I just want that on the record.
No. It's ultimately the board's job to initiate the process, so staff doesn't formally ask member governments if they plan to, but this is the type of thing that you would sort of hear through the grapevine, for lack of a better way, and we have heard zilch. Zero, nothing, nothing. Nada. And yes, and as the memo lays out, there is a way to deal with those requests as they come. The board adopted provisions for emergency requests. There's also a self-certification process for minor adjustments. So, great.
Denny?
Yeah, thank you. That was just what I was going to add, was that administratively small adjustments can be made, and that's just normal procedure.
Okay, any other discussion? Who would have thought we would discuss legislative issues for 30 minutes and pass this in 3 seconds? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next is a sorry, Chris.
You want to make up with it something else?
Yeah, I actually did have another question on legislative stuff, believe it or not.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I asked you that you lost your place. No, go ahead.
Senate Bill 52. So we're off. This is the transportation-oriented development construction defects legislation.
Right.
So it doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell in this legislature anyhow. But sort of teeing up the process, we are doing a study, and I'd heard that maybe the results of the study would be issued early or preliminary results to provide input. So it's toast is
right.
Yeah, Senate Bill 52.
And if I can just real quick, just to tag on to that, we've been down there, and I've been down there telling everybody who asks, and I think if you've been asked, you've been telling them the same thing, that no, the study's not even really started yet, and it's not going to be ready before the end of the session. But on top of that, just today I was talking to a couple of folks who said, someone from the home builders told me that there might be some results from that study by April 14th. And I'm like, how the hell did they even get a date? So I don't know how that information keeps getting out.
Okay, did that answer your question? Okay, now we'll move along to a motion to adopt a resolution to strongly urge Dr. Cog member governments to supply available data in a timely manner so as to best inform regional initiatives such as the land use and travel demand models, MetroVision 2040, the development type model, and continuing evaluation of the urban growth boundary and urban centers.
I'm sorry that's such a long motion.
Yeah. Rachel, you're going to go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for alternative 3, which is no action.
Second. Well, I'd actually like to give Ashley just a minute to talk to us. So we have a motion on the floor, Ashley, and then we'll do discuss. Yeah, there was. Who seconded? Okay.
Okay. My name is Ashley Summers. I'm a GIS manager at Dr. Cog, and I'll be brief about this. The reason that we're here is just to explain that data is very important to us, especially local data. We on the technical side of DRCOG, use that local data for regional planning and analysis, and we're just asking for your support so that when we go out to ask our member jurisdictions for data, that they know that from the top down, we all understand how important their data is to us, and that getting that in a timely fashion really helps us to do the best regional planning and analysis that we can and then provide that back to you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested in hearing from those of you who don't support the motion to give me a little bit better understanding. We're just trying to make sure that the data and information we give you, whether it's in a community profile, in the travel model, in the land use model, whatever data and information we give you is the best available information that's out there. We all know it's garbage in, garbage out. A lot rides on the accuracy of the data and information that is in our studies, that goes into our models, that makes these projections and predictions. So, and this isn't a huge problem. We do have issues with a handful of communities that maybe are short-staffed and can't necessarily provide their data and information to us, but the larger jurisdictions, it's generally not an issue, but there are a couple, I guess, that have said, yes, we'll give it to you, but you have to pay us for it. So I'd just be interested in those of you who object to this as to why and how we might come up with some way to share data and information so that we're all working from the best available information that's out there.
Katie first, and then there's a wrap.
Right. Well,
Does she want me to speak to the motion?
I believe
Sorry,
that
what?
I thought she was asking me to speak to the motion, so I was going to, but I can wait.
Oh. It seems counterintuitive to try to force people to, they know that they are supposed to give this information. I think that perhaps it would be interesting information for all of us to know what has been tried before. Are we just trying to have some sort of piece of paper to wave at them to say, look, you have to do this because this body said you had to? It's kind of silly. If you as their peer cannot elicit that information out of them, a piece of paper is, I don't think, is going to speak any stronger.
Rachel?
I would concur. I think a deadline is a deadline, and if the municipalities or entities that are not submitting information in a timely manner, the consequence of that is they don't get included in the data. I think what would be more appropriate would just be to perhaps send out a letter or a memo or something to this effect that would state, here are the advantages and here are the consequences of not submitting your information in a timely manner, but I don't think it's necessarily something that we should be legislating here this evening.
Jim?
We're already obligated to do this, right?
No.
And so I
No, you're
kind of
not.
agree with Katie that it's just having another piece of paper to kind of, well, now we are strongly urged to do this. And unless you do have a consequence,
I'm
the
sorry.
failure to.
We did use the word strongly urged because we didn't want to make it a forceful document. We're not trying to force anyone to do anything. We just wanted to get your buy-in and your support, because we currently do have some issues attaining data. And it does have some impact on the way that we run our analysis.
Okay, and I'm not sure that I'm in the right order, but Julie and Bill and, I'm sorry,
Hank.
Hank, thanks.
It's often a request of staff that we may not be aware of. So I think the problem, if it's only a handful of members, is better addressed unilaterally. If Lions has not sent its data in, I would like to know, because then I can take it up with the town administrator and get it done. I think that it's not really an appropriate issue as a board as a whole.
Bill?
I would concur with my colleagues' analysis. I mean, if you have a problem with our county, if the staff has, feel free to call me or call any of the other commissioners, and we pick up the phone and make one call, and your request is adhered to. I don't think it's appropriate for the board to slap the hands of every member of DRCOG to force compliance. I certainly support your efforts to seek appropriate and timely data so that we can work on the variety of the projects that we have, particularly the vision mission. So we're here to cooperate, and let us know if you're having a problem with our staff, and we'll correct it for you. I just don't think it's appropriate to send out a nasty letter from DRCOG saying na 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 na. Let's solve the problem rather than creating more of a problem. Thank you.
Hank?
I'll echo the last two speakers.
So I'm hearing that you want to take, I'm sorry.
Requires a vote if you call the question.
Aye. All right. Jim?
It requires a vote
I
to
know.
stop discussion.
So, thank you. So, we've had a request to call the question. The vote that we're taking now is whether we call the question or continue discussion. All those in favor of calling the question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Hey, Chris, I'll find you if you
So now we have the main motion, which is to take position 3, which is no action. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. No, there was someone else that said no, but I don't know who.
That's a unanimous vote.
Okay. I did hear some people suggest that if a community has not responded, they would like to be notified of that. Is the group in favor of that? I hear lots of nods.
Aye.
So direction to staff is call the board member and see if they can follow up and get the information in, because this will, in case you care, not just affect the communities involved. It will affect all of us, because we will not have accurate data on transportation and all sorts of other things. So,
Sue,
okay.
could I just make one comment? I think the point is, if this came as an information item that we are going to be requesting this from your staff, staffs, and we expect to have the data in by a certain amount of time, I as a board member would appreciate knowing that. I think that it was pretty clear. It's just the board action to pass a resolution to do so. But I still would like to know you're requesting information from our staff, even if it's not late.
If you don't get it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
By the way, did you see this article today?
Yeah.
so I'm hearing that we're all okay with butt kicking. We just don't want a letter. Okay. All right.
To make sure our staff. That's right.
Next on the agenda is a motion directing how DRCOG will review RTD's requested 2013 Cycle 1 Fast Track amendments to the fiscally constrained 2035 MVRTP. And I just want to clarify, I know we're getting a presentation. This motion is on the intensity that we direct staff to take in their review. It's not on the amendment from RTD or an evaluation of RTD or anything like that. Okay, with that, Jacob.
Thank you very much. Jacob Rieger, Senior Transit Planner at DRCOG. This is attachment E. It's also page 30, beginning of the staff memo in the PDF. So the RTD has submitted 2 amendments in this current 2013 Cycle 1 to accelerate a segment of North Metro and to add a station to the East Corridor. And you'll find the detail that they've submitted in your packet. As our chair just said, the action requested is guidance to us as staff of what level to review RTD's current RTP amendments to balance flexibility and nimbleness, also keeping in mind our review precedent for fast tracks items. RTD believes that the RTD believes the current amendments are minor and are not significantly different, particularly financially from a financial plan perspective, from the 2012 amendments that you all as the board just approved last month in February. Furthermore, RTD is requesting the amendments because they're requesting amendments in order to receive the NEPA approval from FTA, and in order to do that, the amendments need to be contained in the fiscally constrained regional transportation plan. The agenda memo identifies the three alternatives for how DRCOG's staff could review RTD's current RTP amendments. Staff recommends alternative 1 for this current 2013 Cycle 1 set of amendments. The reason for that recommendation is that based on our initial review as staff, DRCOG staff believes that the financial impacts are not significantly different than the 2012 amendments that you just approved last month. We believe that alternative 1 addresses the board's desire to be more nimble and flexible, and that the other two alternatives would add significant time and cost, and we believe that this is unnecessary at this time. With that, I'd be glad to answer questions.
Questions, comments, discussion? Bill.
Madam Chair, I certainly support the first alternative. We have, RTD has undergone so many, I wouldn't say structural changes, but so many changes in terms of the perceived funding schedule, and that's been amended obviously because of some of the recent announcements of additional funding. So I would certainly support that if we can allow our staff to be, I guess, nimble and aggressive in responding to those changes. I move we support number 1. Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we support alternative 1. Further discussion? Okay, we have more discussion on whether we should send a memo than which. I'm fascinated by tonight's meeting. Okay.
They're just setting you up.
I know.
We just don't like our hands slapped,
right.
ma'am. I'm sorry.
All those shall lead us, yeah. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. And we move into informational briefings, beginning with a presentation on the MetroVision's Implementation Task Force update by Terry Whitmore.
Must be adjourned.
There we go. Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Directors, thank you for allowing me a few minutes to give you an update on the Implementation Task Force, specifically the steering committee projects. It's been just about a year since we came before you, members of the steering committee of the Implementation Task Force, and talked about 4 major projects to move forward, and we did receive approval from this board to do so, and so it was appropriate to bring back information to you at this time to talk a little bit about where we're at and to see if there's any questions, as many of these projects are starting to reach conclusion, and we want to make certain that we get any feedback needed at this point in time if we need to gather more information or if there are any key questions. Just so as a reminder, 2035 is our existing MetroVision plan, and the idea of the Implementation Task Force is to have a plan that is implemented. It doesn't sit on a shelf. And thus, we brought together a strong group of private, public, and not-for-profit community members at very high levels to look at our goals, objectives in the MetroVision 2035 plan, look at our data from DRCOG's staff that we've been able to gather thus far, and see where we may need a little bit of boost to reach our goal. And from that, a number of projects were considered to help address those areas that would provide the most benefit. And that being said, there were 4 recommendations that came forward, and I'll talk about each of those 4 projects. I did want to recognize Jim Taylor at the end of the table who chaired this process, and then we have a number of members of the DRCOG board as well. Councilwoman Kanish is on this committee, and then we had a number of DRCOG staff and others. Did I miss anybody here? I just want to... Yes, yes. And so Tim Mock, yes, from Clear Creek County. So thank you, Tim. I just want to make certain that we recognize those individuals that are here today that have been involved, because they spent a lot of time, upwards of 9 months, going through all this information to come up with these 4 projects. The first project is the Boomer Bond project. We've had a lot of discussion here at the DRCOG table about this one. It was actually a project that was already decided by the board of directors when the implementation task force was brought on board, and there's a lot of great work that's gone on with that committee to date. As many of you know, because either you or some of your staffs have been involved in numerous subcommittees to look at all sorts of topics, from accessibility to how to best design homes in a manner that you're going to be able to live in place, to services, everything that you may need to ensure the quality of life for your aging population in all the communities within the DRCOG region. The next phase of the Boomer Bond project is to bring on board a consultant to develop the toolkit for our area jurisdictions and to look at some case studies to help build that toolkit that can be applicable across the region. And we have a number of those communities already outlined, and we have put out a successful request for proposal. And Tri-County Health is going to be doing that work, and we're working on getting that group under contract to move forward the next phase of the Boomer Bond project. The second item has already been talked about a little bit tonight, is the construction defects legislation project. This project specifically is to look at whether or not the state law on construction defects is negatively impacting the for sale multifamily housing market within the DRCOG region. So it's, first of all, determining, is it a problem, and we're going to be looking at, is it economy that's an issue, or is the legislation negatively impacting that development? And so the consultant, EPS Consulting, that we've are finalizing contracts with right now, we'll be spending 4 months to look first at that question of if the defects are having a negative impact, and if so, they're going to be determining what some recommendations would be for DRCOG to consider in moving forward to address how this particular piece of legislation may be deterring the ability for us to reach our goal of 75% of new employment and 50% of new housing in our urban centers. So that's really the crux of the focus of this study, is to make certain that we're positively moving forward Metro Vision. Yes. Easy.
Terry, in the description it says that you're seeking information about why for sale multifamily developments are underperforming. What's your definition of underperforming?
We will be looking at statistics for our jurisdictions on how many permits are in that category. We're going to be looking at peer communities in the nation to see if they've got similar types of legislation at the state level, if they're seeing this type of impact. There will be interviews with real estate industry, interviews with the insurance industry, so all that information is going to be brought together to make that determination.
So that doesn't answer my question. What do you mean by underperforming?
Let me...
So by underperforming, do you mean not performing at the same level as all these other things you're comparing it to?
The consultant's going to come back and let us know what their thoughts are on underperforming, because essentially we have existing permit levels that took place prior to the legislation, and so they're going to be comparing that with what our levels are now.
So you're saying underperforming means should we be issuing more permits for multifamily for sale residential?
Correct, and so there's no set number you can determine for underperforming. There's a lot of factors, and so that's why they're interviewing all the different segments of the industry.
Okay, Jim, and then Denny, and then Jennifer.
When we met with the Colorado Home Builders Association, they told us that under the legislation that was passed in 2007, that very few cities are issuing for sale multifamily housing units unless they're quite small. That the larger projects and larger builders have gone away because of the state law. So that's what got us started on this track. And without coming right out and saying what I just said, we put in the contract underperforming. The consultants know what we're talking about, but we're trying to get a comparison of what's gone on in the past, what's going on now, and whether there needs to be changes in state law that's going to help us give for sale multifamily units. Most of the places now are issuing permits for apartments, and they're not issuing permits for condos and patio homes, well, condos and townhomes.
Denny?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Board. The comment about underperforming also can be looked at as developers submitting originally projects for sale and then pulling them and converting them to rentals instead, and that's a measurable change. And when they issue the change, the comments that the developer makes, they state the reason for it. And it's the heart of this bill is at the base of that. And that's the underperforming. It's not like we're not doing enough building. It's a matter of the product's different. So what it means for your board when you approve those projects, probably it's a good thing in some ways. You might be building a much higher quality for rent product, hoping that it will convert to a for sale in the future. But you know, you have no idea.
It just sounds to me like there's already a conclusion made. I mean, there might be lots of reasons that not as many are being built. I don't even know if that initial fact is true. And then there might be lots of factors like, you know, credit difficulties. And so the way this is written for me sounds like it's outcome determined, and that just makes me a little concerned. It is way too late for me to be weighing in on this now, but I do think it's a weird thing for DRCOG to be including as one of the four MetroVision implementation initiatives. So, but that being said, I do hope the analysis is actually a little bit broader than how it's worded here.
I think the analysis is broader than it's worded here, and there's anecdotal evidence on both sides of this argument. The developers definitely have a very strong opinion, as do a lot of folks who are concerned about homeowners and their rights. And maybe underperforming isn't the best word. It's a word that's been used by the committee as they've dealt with this. But basically, what we're trying to find out is state law impacting the region's ability to meet its density and TOD goals in MetroVision. And we don't know. And in fact, when it came out in the legislature that, you know, DRCOG was going to have this study, and the way some folks were framing this discussion, frankly, it did sound like that our study had a predetermined outcome, and I don't think that it does. And in fact, I've told staff, if we know what the answer to the question is, why are we spending taxpayer money in order to answer it? So this is not about the state legislature and the things that are going on there. It's really to find out, is there a state law in place that is impacting our ability to build this kind of housing? Because you have said that in MetroVision it's very important to have a diversity of housing, this just being one. So that's really what this is about. We're trying to figure out, based on what the market is demanding and what developers say they want to build, is state law somehow prohibiting that? There could be lots of other things prohibiting it as well, but that was not what the discussion really was in the committee. The committee talked specifically about this state law. I agree there could be lots of things impacting it, but the committee had said they were very concerned that state law was having this effect.
Jack and then Casey.
Yeah, and that's exactly the issue. The real question is it jeopardizing our TOD goals as trying to create our urban center lifestyle of those percentage points? Are we driving people who want to purchase a condo or a home into an urban environment where they're doing it? An example, and I'll just spell it out, was Douglas County, where we had an attached family purchase project that literally got converted to detached because of the fact that this particular law was in place, but yet for sale product is what was being asked for by the marketplace. Rent product is what people have been put in place. It was a very quick response to a lot of the foreclosure stuff. But now the latest responses I'm hearing on the trend is a lot of people who have rented apartments and stuff are now choosing to say, you know what, we now want to purchase. Well, if this is going to jeopardize our goal to get the density ratios we want in our TOD complexes because people can't buy a product and they're going to go somewhere else where they can buy, or what they'll do is they'll search for a smaller product, which is what we did. We actually allowed a smaller detached product that had literally 6-foot setbacks just so we could avoid it. And guess what? That's not good of what we're trying to accomplish. So what we're trying to determine is this bill really affecting TOD? And if it's not, then okay. If it is, then we got to figure out, is there a way to fix that problem? That's it.
Casey.
So the way you framed it, Jennifer, does make a lot more sense to me. That is not how it's written here. And if you want to know if there are state laws that impact the ability to meet our density and TOD goals, that's a very worthwhile question and one that's directly germane to the task of MetroVision. But it's much more narrow here, and it's, as I can tell here, looking at one specific law. I think they, and maybe you've already written the contract with EPS, but I think to the extent you want to say, are there state laws that impact, I mean, I think there probably are, and I think it goes maybe beyond just this one construction defect bill. So if you're having EPS do the research, and they're a very good firm and very capable, I would open it up a little bit and actually ask the question that Dr. Cog really needs to know, which are there state laws which impact our ability to do TOD and meet our density and goals for growth in urban areas.
Okay, you weren't finished, right?
All right, thank you. I will add as a concluding remark on construction defects is there have been comments out there that Home Builders Association is involved in the Dr. Cog study. That is not accurate. They're not a funder of this study, so I think I would just like to make certain that everyone's aware of this here. We do have some outside funding that matched the Dr. Cog dollars for this, but again, we're very cognizant of making certain that it's a very objective study and that we didn't make any promises to any of our funders of any kind of result, because we're really being open and giving the consultant full rein to make that determination. So, the next project that we're working on is the Coordinated Zoning and Economic Development Project. This is chaired by Wayne Reed out of Centennial, and we have a number of area planning directors, directors maybe from economic development, but key leaders that are dealing with development in their region and know that they're needing to talk with their adjacent jurisdiction. We've also expanded this to include maybe certain parties, whether it be utility providers, energy providers, telecom, anybody where there is a real benefit from coming up with an agreement in a multi-jurisdictional, multi-party area where you maybe need to do an overlay zone, where maybe you've done a joint economic development agreement, something where you bring together the parties prior to development happening, come to an agreement to understand what the rules are for the development community right from the start, so thus you are encouraging economic development. A developer can come in and do the work, know what all the rules are from the start. It's an expedited process, and you're more likely to get that business, that development by having all of these things in a row. And the idea from this study is to look at these case studies, best practices, come up with a set of recommendations that we can share with all of our 56 member jurisdictions to then learn from and then build upon these best practices with communities where you might have an adjacent border, but you might have a shopping center that has 2 different jurisdictions, or where you might have an opportunity to partner with a telecom company or an energy company, a water provider, and really start to work through some of these challenges from the start and learn from others who've been there already. So the status of that is we have a meeting coming up in the next 2 weeks where we're going to start to outline those case studies, and we'll start having those recommendations coming forward for you. Probably the top 3 or so is what we're hoping to start with, and then we'll build upon that. And then the last one is our transportation station project. This one is led by Coble, is working with Tom Boone in our office, and it's last mile issues from transit. Basically, we started to look at the 225 corridor. Parties in the past have mentioned about challenges at Denver Tech Center. You know, when you get off the station, how do you actually get to all those wonderful businesses? You don't necessarily have sidewalks to go to these businesses. And are there other transportation innovative techniques that can be used to get people from the station to their businesses and actually have more people riding the system? And so with 225 coming on board, and then our other new light rail and commuter rail stations, we have gone forward and are starting to look at best practices across the nation and actually global. Everything from coming up with one key that can use a car to a Segway to using B-cycle, something where a person can have a membership and choose whichever of these transportation options are made available at a station to go to their particular business. And you know, whether it's the Anschutz campus from 225 or a tech business off of Denver Tech. So we're putting together a report that will be coming to you in the next couple of meetings. What we have found is, even looking globally, there aren't many options that have really been put together successfully. There's a lot of research on this. So we're really leading edge in talking about this topic. So I think it's a very exciting thing. And you know, obviously there are a lot of parties that would need to be brought on board for this transportation station concept, everybody from RTD to the jurisdictions to our business partners. And the one key thing is for this to really be successful, you can't just do one station, but you're going to need to broaden it to a whole network for it to really work, so that parties know that when they sign up, they can really count on this at more than just one location on the system. So it's a really great project. I know I hear a lot of discussion across the region about this challenge, especially as we start to have our new rail lines coming on board. So stay tuned for that report.
Madam Chair.
Bill.
I'd just like to add, I certainly support this particular issue, and as it relates to the VA hospital on the Anschutz campus. There is a tremendous amount of controversy within the veteran community and some of the city and county officials concerning the placement of that particular station and its inaccessibility to the hospital. We build a station and then we have to ask the veterans to walk 3 or 4 blocks or in their take their wheelchairs to the entrance of the VA hospital. And we've been pressing both the contractor and the VA that they need to rethink this location. I know that I would certainly support a statement from our learned colleagues here to support that effort to take another look at the placement of that station. Do I have to put that in the form of a motion? It is RTD, but I mean it's a comment.
That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Do we have other questions or comments? I mean, I think your comment is well taken in terms of they should look at the stations and how applicable they are in all cases, but my guess is no matter where you put them, somebody is going to say, okay, now you moved it closer for the VA, but they can't get to children's or whatever.
Yeah, well, my point is that that I understand that the initial construction coordinator said that early on in the construction and design phase that RTT will never get here. And we surprised her. And I think it's important that we all are cognizant of the need for this, for accessibility. Clearly, the VA has been rather recalcitrant, as has particular and RTD in looking at a solution to this problem.
Thank you, Terry. And I would like to take a minute to commend everyone for their engagement on this issue. We spend an awful lot of time developing philosophies and principles to be implemented by 2035. And I could be wrong, but I don't think any of us will be sitting around this table in 2035, and probably lots of staff won't be either. So the implementation, what? Aspen will be here. I'm sorry, I forgot. Aspen's kind of hidden to me behind it. Okay, so Aspen, we're counting on you. But really, the implementation policy is the nuts and bolts of all this, and it's going to be the success or lack of success of the vision that we put in place, the 2035 vision and the 2040 vision. So it is important to be engaged. I appreciate everyone's comments on it. Next, we're moving into informational briefings, committee reports, and we did want to have one last report from Steve Rudy.
Yes, thank you. By the way, the transportation stations, just keep in mind, autonomous vehicles. So keep your eye on Google vehicles. That's the. If you want to think about, you got to have a whole bunch of, got all people coming into a transit station and they need to get someplace, but they don't need to get back until a lot later on. How do you get the vehicle back to serve others? Autonomous vehicles. So think about it. 2035, remember. That's a STAC report. The STAC State Transportation Advisory Committee discussed a number of items of perhaps interest to you. The first is what's known as the Federal Lands Access Program. This is a federally funded program, new to MAP 21, that funds things like roads, bike pedestrian trails, transit access to and within federal lands. So those of you that have federal lands, Rocky Flats, Rocky Mountain Arsenal, I don't know, could be the Jeffco, the prison out in Jeffco. If you were thinking about facilities that need access, that you would like to put access to or within those, not to mention all of the mountain counties and communities with all those federal lands, just think about this. This is an opportunity. We sent an email out to your staff earlier this week. Applications are due May 15th. If you or your staff have any questions about it, please give us a holler here. We'll make sure that you get the announcement so that you know where to look for, to find out more about this program. STAC also was briefed on CDOT staff recommendations for fiscal year 2014 for the types of money that DRCOG allocates out to you in the tip. Now remember, we don't even know what 2013 is going to be like at the federal level quite yet. Maybe soon, but this is 2014, so these are sort of estimates. One program took the place of the enhancement program. It's known as the Transportation Alternatives Program. CDOT will fund that at their proposal, funded at the previously estimated level for 2014, so nobody loses any money. And one of the things that I propose to STAC is the funds are a little less. Take all of the funds away from DRCOG, about $300,000, as long as DRCOG gets backfilled with another kind of funds. It's my understanding that well, first of all, that met with success at STAC, and my understanding is that is meeting with favorable head nods from the Transportation Commission. Second is the CMAQ program. So I'm going to try to be very careful about how I say this. MAP 21 brought more CMAQ money to the state than the state had estimated previously for 2014. So what the state CDOT staff is proposing to do is, at least for right now, to deliver the amount of CMAQ funds to us, like Dr. Cog and others who get CMAQ funds, in the amount that had been previously estimated. But there's $13 million more. And their proposal is to not make a decision on that right now. They would like to give the Colorado Energy Office time to complete a CNG infrastructure study. And once that study is done, then the process for determining what to do with that $13 million will be held. So right now, no decision has been made to give the money to the Colorado Energy Office. Uh-oh, new change.
No, I was just going to say, Steve, don't forget, out of that pot, Dr. Cog would get backfilled.
Yeah, well, 300,000 of the 13 million backfills the Dr. Cog thing. But anyhow, I know that there's been some word and concern that CDOT has already funded the Colorado Energy Office for CNG. Not true, but that's to be determined later this summer. The third is the STP Metro funding source. CDOT staff has indicated they will allocate that out to MPOs per the specific language of the MAP 21 law. What that means, Stack sort of gave a head nod to that. That means Dr. Cog will get a little bit more than previously estimated, not a tremendous amount more. And again, that depends on any number of things that happen at the federal level. The third item was RAMP. Jennifer has mentioned that. We are holding a workshop here Monday afternoon at 3:30 for CDOT to make a brief presentation, but more to work with sponsors who might have projects. So if you can't attend, you're welcome to attend, but it's probably more for the people on your staff who might fill an application, a pre-application out. Make sure they're here 3:30 Monday afternoon. Long-range plan revenue projection. This is something that was presented to STAC. The Transportation Commission will have a workshop on it tomorrow. So as we at Dr. Cog and as the state as a whole try to put together a 2040 plan, how much revenue will there be reasonably anticipated to fund transportation projects? As you can see just from what's going on at the federal level right now, we're a little uncertain what we're going to get for 2013, let alone every year between now and 2040. CDOT staff looked at numerous scenarios. The scenario that staff recommended has several salient features. Some of you may remember Senate Bill 09228, state general fund transfers come to transportation for a 5-year period when economic times get better. Conversation about, well, yeah, like that's ever going to happen? But the general feeling is if CDOT doesn't put a claim to it, for sure the legislature will not ever do it. So the staff proposal was to assume the 5 years of the Senate Bill 228 transfer. Question about what to assume at the federal side. Will there continue to be federal general fund revenues that go to transportation, or will we fall back and simply utilize the funds that come to the highway users fund, the gas tax money? The thought was, yes, we will continue to assume a level of federal general fund transfer. That could mean it's replaced by something else between now and 2040. However, I will say at the end of the day, with those two non-conservative assumptions, that there were probably some other conservative assumptions. At the end, FY 2014 estimating budget around $1.25 billion for CDOT. They're estimating from 2023 until 2040 that the budget would be flat at about $1.35 billion a year. So those economists in the room understanding that whenever you say your budget is going to be the same number, it just means that inflation continues to eat that up. So my guess is that when my successors and you put together the 2040 plan, the revenue situation is not going to be a very happy scenario. And finally, STAC was briefed on two CDOT efforts underway. One was a state freight plan, and the takeaway I have for that is that a freight advisory council will be reformed shortly, and on membership will include 2 local government representatives from each CDOT engineering region. If there are any of you personally, or if you have any counselors or other commissioners who may have knowledge, background, and experience with freight, you ought to give CDOT a call, perhaps volunteering to be a member. I suppose Deb would know how to get you in touch with the proper person at CDOT. You can contact Deb.
You can contact me. He works for me.
Is freight the same as baggage? Because I have a lot of council members with baggage.
I will not answer that question. And the final is the final is a regional commuter bus study that CDOT is trying to push forward, that would have commuter type service from Colorado Springs to Denver, perhaps from Castle Rock to Denver, from Fort Collins to Denver, and perhaps from the Carbon Valley, Tri-Towns to Denver, and from Vail to Denver, and then other places in the I-70 corridor.
Betcha.
You can take that back. That was not one of their corridors. However, that there will be public meetings that deal with this at some point in that process, and so as it gets a little closer to that stage, will make you aware of it. And that is my STAC report. My last STAC report.
Questions for Steve? Next, Mayor Tisdale has volunteered to take over the Metro Mayor's Caucus report, for which I am very grateful. Doug?
The Metro Mayor's Caucus has not met since the last DRCOG board meeting. And that actually reminds me of an amusing story.
Does it involve karaoke?
Report from the Metro Area County Commissioners. Don Rozier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met in the beautiful brand new Adams County facility, and if you ever show up there, make sure you park on the right side of the building. Don't park on the opposite side, because you'll end up being very late for your meeting, because it's like 1.5 miles long. So the meeting was great. Attended extremely well. We had presentations. We had a presentation by Maria Garcia Berry on the transportation poll results that CRL recently put together, or went out and then put together the results. And then we had a construction defect legislation discussion from Commissioner Jill Rapella from Douglas County. We also had a discussion on the incompetent to stand trial task force looking at and working with Sheriff Robinson, correct? Yeah. On that task force and working there. So that's what we did.
Thank you. Next, we have a report from the Advisory Committee on Aging. Cliff?
Yes, we had our meeting in March, and Chandra Matthews provided us a very detailed presentation of Dr. Cogg's newest program called Community Care Transitions. It's a CCTP is the new acronym we're going with again. This is a program designed to save taxpayer dollars, reduce readmissions to the hospitals, allow more people to go home instead of into a nursing home, and after a hospital stay. It will provide needed support, information, and services to seniors and their families to ensure a successful discharge procedure. JADO provided a report on the impact that sequestration will have on the programs that are funded and operated through the AAAs. She explained that they are waiting for direction on how the implementation cuts from the federal government will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a report from the RAC. Joyce Thomas or Jackie.
Thank you.
Joyce, thank you.
We had a review of legislation of interest, and two of the items were collector vehicle emission requirements. Currently, it's a little too broad, and there are collector car plates out there on cars that look like they're about to fall apart. So the legislation was introduced to clean that up and say that really classic cars are the only ones that should have those special plates. It will now require emissions every 5 years rather than basically getting one emissions and then never having to have emissions again. And my concern, I'm in the car business, so my concern was this something that was discussed with the collector car groups, and did they agree with this? And they did. So I was all with it and signed on. This is basically, we discussed and we said, okay, well, we support it as a group. The other, and that was House Bill 1071. The next one was House Bill 1091, which is diesel emissions testing revisions, and it just makes the system easier for those with diesel vehicles to be able to get their emissions tests. We also had an update on oil and gas issues. Recent Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission rulemaking, and that was presented by Jake Matter, Attorney General's Office. CDPHE stakeholder process regarding oil and gas rule revisions was presented by Will Allison of the Air Pollution Control Division, and there are proposed CDPHE study on air quality impacts from oil and gas operations, and that was presented by Gordon Pierce of the Air Pollution Control Division. There was also an update on Ozone Aware. They have put out an advertising program for the summer, and so they were discussing what those were going to be. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Joyce. Next is an update on the MetroVision Implementation Task Force. Jim?
Yes, under Attachment F, which is what Terry talked about, that gives pretty much the report from the Implementation Task Force. I also want to point out on Attachment H, the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2, it talks about the Sustainable Communities Initiative. You remember we received a $4.5 million grant from HUD to deal with sustainable communities. We have a meeting from 8 to 2 on Saturday at the Tivoli Center on on Friday. Sorry, Friday. Thinking ahead over here. It's Friday at the Tivoli Center from 8 to 2. to talk about the progress we've made in the last year on this grant and where we'll be going in the future. And we're pulling in some high-powered speakers. Congressman Perlmutter will be there. We'll have a peer review out of the Puget Sound Council of Governments who they're a year ahead of us, and some other speakers as well. It is a $15 charge. If you want to show up, we will take you as a late entry at the Tivoli Center on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Friday morning. I don't know why.
He likes
I would do
Saturday.
this on Saturday. Maybe it's because I wish it was on Saturday. It's Friday morning at 8 o'clock.
Either that or I'm going to be by myself Friday morning at 8 o'clock, one or the other. Okay, and our last report is on the East 470 Authority, Ron Rakowski.
And my co-person there, Jim, feel free to jump in when I'm done. We had State Patrol for the first time in almost ever, right, Jim, if I remember, give a report on accidents and traffic enforcement on E470, and then we had a I think fairly interesting report from the State Patrol on how auto theft is becoming bigger and bigger in Colorado, and tying in the data from E470 to try and find some of the stolen cars. And lastly, and most important to all of us, is E470's attempts to cut down on wrong-way drivers and what they've done there, which is quite considerable. And they're almost done with that project, and I think, frankly, once they finish, there's not much else that can be done. But they have from 30 to 35 incidents a month, or was it a year, Jim, on diabetic? People that are out driving and have diabetic reactions and get into accidents. And they had a wrong-way driver the night before our meeting, and they were able to track him through cameras and alert the State Patrol and get everybody. And fortunately, nobody got hurt. The guy ran off the road, but it was because of a diabetic reaction. That's all. Jim, anything else that I miss?
The only thing, one thing that scares people about E470 is the amount of information that E470 can collect about people going on the road. And I guess we're trying to figure out good ways to use that information. Tracking stolen vehicles, for one thing. But there is a lot of information that's being collected. So be careful where you go. Okay.
You're not alone.
All right, that concludes our informational briefings. Our next meeting is April 17th. I will not be available for that meeting, so Commissioner Hilbert is going to chair that meeting.
No, I'm calling in now.
I think I have an alternate.
Do we have any other matters by members?
Well, we didn't want to bring up tax-free
Jennifer?
muni bonds.
Yeah, I just want to say that we probably are going to schedule an MVIC meeting for April 3rd. If we have any voting items, they'll probably be very small items, but we are probably going to do that ramp, have that ramp discussion, talk with MVIC about MOU, whether or not that's important to the board because it is expiring, as well as that presentation on map 21. So that's what we're thinking right now. MVIC is open to all the members of the board. There's two really big issues. Well, actually all three of those things are big issues and important to the board, but it'd probably be just information, presentations, Q&A, that sort of thing. But that's what you can probably expect from MVIC on the 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, any other matters from members? If not, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.